Hey, good morning. Good to see some of you already here hanging out, wishing Walter a happy birthday. That's very kind of you. And you're right, Walter had his birthday a couple days ago. I realized that we missed it because we were out of town in Virginia when it actually happened. So we celebrated after we got back last week. Um, Unfortunately for Walter, this also meant that it was time for his annual checkup. And so we had the vet come yesterday to do a little checkup on Walter. And Walter, he does not like the vet. He doesn't like being told what to do. And so the vet was here, the vet had an assistant, and they needed to draw some blood to do a blood test on Walter. And he fought and fought and fought. I don't think he was in pain at all. Because like the second that we let go of him, the vet tech let go of him, he was perfectly fine. He just did not want to be told what to do in that moment and to be forced into giving blood. But fortunately, it's over with. He is perfectly fine. Hopefully, he has forgotten about it, and we'll get the test results back soon. He seems to be in great health for a 15-year-old cat. But yeah, I wish I had Walter on camera here, but he's cozying up in his bed right now, and he's doing well. So yeah, happy birthday to Walter on his 15th birthday. And he still acts like a kid. Like even a few minutes ago, I walked down the hall, and one of his toys was in the middle of the hall, and I know that toy was on the other end of the condo just minutes before that. So he was playing like a little kitten with his toys, even at 15 years old. So that's Walter's birthday happening today. Hope you all are doing well. As always, I'm here for the next hour. Feel free to share anything with me about any topic, especially Stonemaier Games related stuff, but you can really talk about anything. You can ask me anything. I'm happy to talk about anything you want. I have a bunch of various topics to talk about today. Here's the first question from Anthony. He says, have you tried Sanctuary yet? The Ark Nova-like game. I haven't. Megan got to play it last Thursday at the heavy game night that we attend sometimes, but I was busy playing a different game called Planta Nubo. So I didn't get in on the Sanctuary game. I would have gladly played it. I do look forward to playing it, but I haven't played it yet. Some other games that I did play recently, other than Planta Nubo, is I had a hankering for Dune Imperium. I put this in the comments. I was listening to the Decision Space podcast, and they were talking about deck building games. I got excited to play Dune Imperium, and so I pulled it out, or I didn't pull it out. I had a friend bring a copy. I hosted it, and we had a 4-player game of Dune Imperium Uprising, and had a great time doing that. I also played Tiny Towns and Faraway on my Board Game Arena game night last Wednesday. I have my in-person game night tonight, and I'll probably end up playing Old King's Crown for the first time. I'm hoping to play that one. But I also recently played 2 other fun games with Megan. We played a horse-themed game called Stable Times, and we also played a dueling card game called Duel for Cardia. We had a good time with both of them for different reasons. One, Stable Times was a set collection game with a spatial element that I thought was really clever, and Duel for Cardia was a really neat, snappy, simultaneous dueling game that I really enjoyed as well, despite losing both times to Megan. Garrett says, what was your favorite meal of the week? Ooh, good question, Garrett. We've had a lot of food indulgences recently from various restaurants around town. So we had what we consider the best grilled cheese sandwich with an egg on it from Songbird. We had that the other day. We treated ourselves to some food at a place called Damn Fine Hand Pies here in St. Louis. That was also really delicious. They had a really, really good creamy potato soup that we got, their fall special. Those were both really good. We also hung out with Megan's brother and sister-in-law, and her sister-in-law, Alex, is an excellent chef, and she made a vegetarian lasagna that we really, really enjoyed. And yesterday, Megan picked up Vietnamese food from Little Saigon, so we got Vietnamese food as well yesterday. All were good meals. I don't know if I could pick one as my clear favorite, because I've really enjoyed all of them. What about you, Garrett? Do you have a particularly memorable meal recently? Chad says, did you get any good ideas from the Vantage Challenge suggestion in your survey? I did. Yeah, quite a few, actually. So many that it will be quite a lot for me to go through, but I will be going through them, and over time we have an abundance now, I think, of monthly challenges. I've only skimmed it so far. I'm waiting kind of maybe a little closer to the next update to go through it in detail. But we got over 3,000 responses, I think, to the general survey that I sent out in the Vantage update last week. And the current Vantage challenge is the Zoolander. For those of you who are doing these monthly challenges just for fun, the Zoolander is a challenge where I don't know if you've seen the Zoolander movie, but the quirk about Zoolander is that he can't turn to the left. He can only turn to the right. And so this challenge and Vantage is that you can explore the world as normal. You just can't ever go directly to the west, to your left. So you can go north, south, or east when you are departing from your current location, just not directly to the left. Let's see. Dan says, I've just received my copy of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Unmatched Adventures, such a nostalgic IP for me. Do you have a favorite IP that takes you back to being a child? That's a fun question, Dan. I open that one up to anybody who wants to answer. Let's see. So when I was a child, one of the book series that I read in particular, because I didn't watch a lot of TV as a child, very, very little TV. I was aware of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and there's definitely some nostalgia there, a lot of nostalgia there. More from playing the arcade game, I think, than watching any shows or anything. But the book series that really stands out to me when I think about books I read as a child, I read a lot of Roald Dahl, but I also read a lot of the Redwall series. And so anthropomorphic animals in forest medieval style kingdoms, that theme, not even just Redwall specific, but that theme in general has a lot of nostalgia for me. And that's one of the reasons that I think when I saw the Everdell box for the first time, I was like, wow, this looks amazing. And Root, I think, scratches that itch in a different way. So that is a theme in general that I really, really enjoy. The anthropomorphic animals living in a forest with medieval overtones. Ian says, have you ever tried knitting? Not since home economics, Ian, for a long time ago. Ian says he's trying to knit a scarf for his wife for Christmas, although maybe not this Christmas. I have heard it takes a while. I have some friends who knit, and they said it takes quite a long time. But that's a very thoughtful and time-consuming gift that you're working on, Ian. Nicole says that we had a stellar game of Wormspan at Nicole's Gaming Cafe where a player had 17 action coins in the last round. That is a lot. Good use of when played, copying cards for additional two times coins again. That's wild. Yeah, it seems almost unlikely that could happen, but Nicole, I trust that you were making sure this player was playing by the rules. One little thing is that at the end of your turn, you have to discard down to 9 coins. So I think they probably had like 8 coins and they gained 1, and they spent it and they gained 1. They didn't have 17 coins at the time, but that is highly unlikely in Wormspan. And we actually tried to make it a little less likely in what we did with the Wormspan Dragon Academy expansion, to cut down just a little bit on the playing time that can happen when you have someone who is really good at getting those coins. Rick says, will you be debuting New Birds along with the continent announcement for Wingspan? New Birds along with the continent announcement for Wingspan. I guess, Rick, there will definitely be New Birds in the Wingspan expansion that we're launching in late January is what we're on track for right now. When I do the announcement, so my current plan, I'll let you all know the current plan. My current plan is on the December 31st livecast. I plan to do a livecast like this, but focused on previewing what we have coming up throughout the year in 2026. And I might reveal a little bit more than I usually do. I don't know if I'll do like the covers of the products that we're releasing, but I will be sharing like thematic details, locations, general ideas about what we're revealing. So I will probably reveal a few of the cards from the Wingspan expansion at that time. I don't think it'll be the main focus, but that will be something that I will do as part of this reveal. This 2026 preview that I'll do on December 31st. Monkey Butler says, I'm not a disc golf player, so I'm curious if the winter impedes your play or if it's a year-round sport. For me, it is a year-round sport. I play disc golf almost every weekend. I had a great time playing this last. In fact, we had a beautiful fall day this past weekend where we almost lost some disc in the leaves. I would say the leaves provide a big challenge for finding discs. But in the winter, in St. Louis, we do get some ice, we do get some snow. And if it's a really, really icy or snowy day where we just have no traction, we generally won't play. But I don't mind the cold. I found that I can bundle up really well. I have some electric hand warmers that I use to keep my hands warm. I've almost found that I mind the really brutal heat of summer more than the cold of winter. Even though I'm a person who obviously prefers short sleeve shirts. On the inside, on indoors, I prefer it to be warm. But outdoors, I can bundle up and I can be pretty comfortable playing disc golf, especially after I get moving a little bit. Compared to 95 degrees in summer, I can't play in that. It really gives me like a form of sun sickness almost. I'll get a headache afterwards. FG Bison says, got a chance to unbox my Origin story yesterday. Any tips for reboxing the game with all the dials and cards sleeved? Seems a bit of a fit, an issue fitting all in. With sleeves, you probably are going to have an issue fitting everything in that box. We went with a very, very tight package for Origin story, and it's a tight fit, fairly tight fit, even without sleeving the cards. In general, I recommend not sleeving the story cards because they're only shuffled one time per game. I recommend only sleeving the playing cards, if at all. I think we made very durable cards that are going to last a long time. Even if you're shuffling them a lot, they should last a long time. But if you really want to sleeve any cards in the game, I recommend only sleeving the playing cards. And there is, I don't have it handy. Let's see if I have it on our website. There is a certain configuration of like where I put the dials and where I put the other components in my box that results in it fitting well. But I don't know if I've posted that anywhere. Maybe I should post that somewhere. No, I don't have a good photo of my organization. And I actually lent my copy out, so I can't show you on camera right now either. But I will try to take a photo and include it on our website so you can see how I organize things so that they fit in the box. Chad says, there's a lot of funny news around the Comet 3-Eye Atlas that it might be aliens. What would you do if the comet suddenly became very obvious it was aliens and it started to travel directly to Earth? Is this the comet that's due to arrive in like 10 to 12 years, or is it, that will influence my answer, Chad. This is a recent comet coming a decade in the future versus a little bit in the future. Honestly, I would be kind of excited. Like, it would be, I think there is an incredibly high chance that there is intelligent life on other planets in our galaxy or in our incredibly vast universe. I think we're so spread out that I think it's unlikely that in any of our lifetimes that we will see something like that. But if it was, in your hypothetical example, if it became very obvious that was what was happening, I think I would approach it with curiosity and fascination. Maybe a little bit of the fear of the unknown. I think that might be a little inevitable, but mostly I think I would be very curious to learn more, encounter some form of life well beyond anything that we've met here on Earth. Or maybe it would be very similar to what we've met here on Earth. I don't know. I'd be very curious. Yeah. Armando says, after you made Vantage, did you have any ideas for tabletop games that involve side-scrolling or top-down views? No, I can't say that Vantage in particular inspired anything from that perspective. I think there are a lot of games that I play that include the top-down view, and that's why I wanted to do something a little bit different with Vantage, or very different with Vantage, using the first-person perspective. Side-scrolling, there are a few games that have tried that, and I'm intrigued by that format. That it's very video gamey, right, to do side-scrolling. But I played a few games like that, and I don't know if they sparked anything in particular. I think the one area where I would be curious to see a side-scrolling game would be, and we've seen a little bit of it in Boss Monster, but in a deck building format where the cards that you're playing are forming a side-scrolling map for you to go through. I think that would be cool. Oh, Austin has a nice comment about the rulebook post that I posted last week. In fact, yeah, this was inspired by you, Austin, and others in, I think, last week's livecast. We were talking about rulebooks and what makes a good rulebook. You gave me some great notes on that, and that resulted in a post about rulebooks that I wrote last week. Austin, I'm glad that was helpful for you. Thank you. Peter says, did I read A Wrinkle in Time as a kid? And I did. I definitely did. Maybe even multiple times. I was fascinated by the idea of tesseracts bending space and time in that way. And Peter says, surprised no one has made a game of it. Perhaps the bad, unsuccessful movie precluded it. I never saw the movie. I can't say that if it was bad or not, but I don't think it was particularly successful from a financial standpoint. But yeah, it's interesting that a game hasn't been made of that book. I'm curious if the book has withstood the test of time. I haven't read it since I was a kid, probably 30 years ago. So has anyone read it? Have you read it more recently, Peter? What I'm reading right now, good segue here, is I just finished the book Darkly, which was a recommendation from Hilda, who is sometimes here in the comments. Hilda recommended and actually gave me a copy of this book, which is very kind of Hilda. And it's kind of about, or it is about, a group of six, I think it's six younger people, maybe in their 18, 19, 20, around that age group, who win a competition to go to the island of a very, very famous board game designer, which is a fascinating, as a game designer, as a game publisher, it's fascinating to see this in this world. And it is a world that's meant to be like our world. But in this world, this game designer is so famous that everyone in the world knows this game designer. And everyone in the world has played or is fascinated by this designer's games. And mostly they appear to be like escape room style games. But it's very interesting to read the idea of a world where game designers are that level of fame, or are like Taylor Swift level of fame, and their games are played by everyone in the world. It's still a very niche hobby in reality. And so it was neat and almost a little otherworldly to read this book where this person is, where there's so much fascination around this game designer. I can relate to that in my hobby, in my industry, but for the rest of the world, that doesn't appear to be the case. So it's a neat book to read. I'm also reading Strength of the Few, which is the sequel to Will of the Many, which is a really fascinating fantasy / dystopian novel set in a completely different world. That book just came out, along with the third book in the Legends and Lattes series from Travis Baldree. I'm really looking forward to that, but I want it to be like a little colder before I read that one, because that's a very cozy novel. I associate it with like cozying up in the winter with a good book. Are you reading, or any of you reading anything really fun right now that you're enjoying, or have recently read anything recently? The Champion Faction says, I watched the Before You Place playthrough of Stamp Swap. I'd love a video where you discuss the publishing surprises you've had and what you learned from them. Yeah, that's a good video topic, or a blog topic. That's often the type of topics that I blog about surprises. Yeah, things that surprise me. I'll think about that. Yeah, I'll think about publishing surprises. Yeah, thanks for that topic. Steven, one of my disc golf and gaming friends here, says that friendship keeps us warm when we play disc golf in the winter. I like that, Steven. Garrett says, have you had the chance to check out Tag Team yet? No, on my list were Tag Team and Duel for Cardia. I've now tried Duel for Cardia, really enjoyed it. I look forward to playing Tag Team. And I've heard, even though it is on Board Game Arena, that it is better to try for the first time on the tabletop because of the way that you're inserting cards into the deck. Garrett says, I think you'd really dig it. I appreciate any endorsement from Garrett. And he says, it's like a mix of Challengers and Dice Throne, two games that I really, really enjoy. So yeah, I'm very excited to play that one. Currently, it's on my Geekway mini list to try in January if I haven't tried it by that time instead. Oh, cool. 6 Sojourns from Red Raven just arrived for J-Sand. I backed that as well, so I'm excited to get my copy soon. I also just got Millennia and Thiefdom from the creators of Clans of Caledonia, so I'm really excited to try those in the near future as well. Steve is kind of asking about my chocolate of the day. What is my chocolate of the day? I'm still, the primary chocolates that I'm eating right now are the chocolates that Corel gave to some members of my team to give to me after Essen. They are Belgian chocolates from Newhouse, and they are really, really delicious. I'm trying to limit myself to 2 a day. I've cheated on that once, but yeah, I've tried to limit myself to 2 of those a day because they're really, really rich and delicious. That'll be my chocolate of the day for today for sure. Monkey Butler Lab says, you've played many games in many spaces. Do you prefer a smaller play area for ease of reach, or a bigger play space where you need to reach to make your move? Perhaps to lean over the table. That's an interesting question. I mean, I certainly like for everything to fit on the table itself. So I think in general, maybe I lean towards not the biggest gaming table where you always have to stand up to reach over the table, and it's hard to even see stuff from across the table. That's more about maybe the product design than the table design. But not so small that you're cramped and you're having to put like player mats and cards in positions where you can't always fit them. And one key here, I would say for me, is that I am an open hand player. I almost always just leave my hand face up on the table. And so I like for there to be room on the table for my hand of cards. Someone already mentioned the Vantage update this past week. And so, yeah, that Vantage update, we had a monthly challenge. We had a big survey on that Vantage update. If you missed that update and you want to read what it was said in it, it is archived and linked on the main Vantage page of our website. I'm trying to think if there's anything else big in that. Oh, I also put an update in there about the second printing, the reprint of Vantage, not the second printing, but the reprint arriving in just a few weeks. Early December is when it should arrive. So if you're looking to get Vantage, but you don't have access to it, it is sold out on most of our web stores. It'll be back in stock very soon, along with the update pack that we have for Vantage. That we should have some copies. The full reprint will take a little while, but we have some backup copies that we had in the warehouse that in China that will show up on the web store around that time as well. Okay, Chad clarifies that the 3i Atlas comet is passing by our solar system right now. Well, that's cool. Very, very in the near future. Some suggestions here from Melissa and Rick that they are just bees in space, and that would be really cool if that were that would be great for sales of apiary if that turned out to be the case. Seven Castles Games says, is the origin story the light small game you were planning to release, or do you still have something up your sleeve to launch in 2026? We actually still haven't signed a light, small, large group, probably cooperative game. So no, we haven't even signed it yet. So we don't have anything in the motion in the mix for that yet. If we did sign it, if we signed it like today, it wouldn't be a 2026 release. That would be a 2027 release at best. We've already mapped out almost everything that will happen in 2026. And I say almost because Pete and I are currently working on adding more superhero cards to Origin Story in like a promo pack form. Those are the cards that you reveal at the beginning of round 5. And that is something that we will probably add to the schedule for 2026, just because it's a little promo pack for Origin Story. We're actually going to get together to play test it on Friday. Oh, cool. Edward's also reading Darkly. I hope you enjoy it. I said Edward. Peter, who asked about A Wrinkle of Time, he says, it's a favorite of the entire family, favorite book of our gifted class in elementary school, and we had 20, 30, and 40-year reunions. Oh, wow. And it's a favorite book of their children and grandchildren. So clearly for Peter, it holds up for you. That's wonderful that A Wrinkle for Time has done that for you. Peter's also reading Red Rising right now. Oh, Aaron's reading a book called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. It's a book about game design. Yeah, it's a book about more video game design and the dynamics between two people. And it actually reminds me a lot. I did read that book, and it reminded me a lot of the show Mystic Quest. I believe that's the name of the show. And the dynamic between two of the creatives in that show. Austin says, have you been interested in the new Avatar Magic the Gathering set? Really enjoyed playing it with our local game stores pre-release last Friday. Oh, that's great to hear. I am curious about it. I don't have any scheduled drafts or anything of it. I haven't done a Magic draft in a while. So maybe it's about time to do one. I've been kind of waiting for a set to like really, really excite me to do that. And one hasn't done that in a while. But the Avatar set does look really, really cool. And I like how they incorporated all the bending elements, like earth bending, into it. Did you have a favorite mechanism from it? Austin, I'm sure it's so full of mechanisms that it would be a great favorite mechanism video. So maybe I should play it just for that. Peter says, any consideration of an official variant rule that gives players a choice of 2 tapestry cards each time they get one? That's my only knock on the game. You can get a series of low-value tapestry cards as a matter of bad luck. So the reason that isn't the case in the game, Peter, and I completely understand someone house ruling that, but in tapestry, you get an abundance of tapestry cards. And I think like the game gives you one automatically every round, and there are ways to get more. And I think if you had a 2-for-1 choice, it would devalue any action space that gives you a tapestry card. I think it would just devalue that space overall. And I think it would also slow down the game. If you're sitting there trying to make a decision between two different tapestry cards in the middle of your turn, I think that would significantly slow down the game. So it is certainly something I considered in the design. It is not something I recommend, but it is something that I understand if someone wants to house rule that. But it will definitely not be an official variant because I don't think it's the right thing for the game. Monkey Butler says, how is the design for the games contained within the alternate world coming along? Earlier this year, you mentioned you were partnering with another team. The alternate world. I'm not quite sure what that's referring to. Maybe this is referring to the Smoking Bones world from Andrew Bosley. This is his Wits End brand and the Smoking Bones universe. He has released one book in that world, kind of a guidebook for showing a small part of that world. And this is a world that we're working with Andrew to create some games in that world. And that progress, I guess the quick progress update is that it is going well. It is going very well for two of the games. The third game in that world, and there'll probably be 3 total. It's taking a little bit more time, but that's okay because that's far in the future anyway. That one's the one that yeah, so I'm looking forward to sharing more about that when we have information to share. Champion Faction says, I believe I would enjoy editing and providing feedback about rulebooks. I already help playtest games for some publishers, but what do you recommend for getting into rulebook editing? If you're playtesting games, I would say that is like the initial opportunity to show a publisher that you have some good feedback to give them about rulebook editing. Like that you can send them back the digital rulebook with comments on it. You can do it if they have it as a Google Doc. You can comment on that Google Doc. And that's, I would say, that a good way to get your foot in the door of doing that. Beyond that, if you want to, in fact, I would say most like foot in the door techniques involve crowdfunding projects, because I think a lot of crowdfunding projects, when they share their rulebook, that is a good chance for you to offer feedback on that rulebook. There are probably good and bad ways to do that. I'm trying to put myself in their shoes. If I'm a crowdfunding creator and I put my rulebook out there, what's the best way to get feedback on that rulebook? I would say the best way probably would be for you to download, and this is my very specific personal preference based on the way that we do things. I would download the in progress PDF of the rulebook or whatever form the rulebook is in, and I would comment on it using the Adobe Acrobat commenting feature or or if it's in like Word, comment there, or Google Docs, comment on there, whatever the commenting feature is for the default format for that rulebook. And make your revisions as if you were just revising the text. That is, I would say, the main thing that would be very, very helpful. So if you see that I've phrased that the creator has phrased something in a way that's a little confusing, don't just say this is confusing as your comment. Instead, suggest the text that you think will make it less confusing, and then just send that entire rulebook over to the creator. I know this doesn't result in you getting paid for your time when you're doing that, but which is fair because the creator didn't ask you to do it. They didn't go to say, hey, can you? I want to pay to do this. It's you volunteering your own time to get your foot in the door, so that maybe in the future, if that publisher, if that creator has other games, they could go to you and say, hey, you did a really good job with editing this rulebook or proofreading this rulebook. Would you consider doing it for this rulebook? And we're happy to pay you or compensate you for doing so. Yeah. Stuart says, were you able to see the aurora the other night? We weren't able to see it, unfortunately. No. Jeff says, do you generally take some time away from work over the holidays, or do you still do job-related activities daily? I enjoy doing job-related activities every day, Jeff, and so I really don't take I don't really ever take a break if I can help it. Weekends, holidays, they're all just days for me to hopefully serve you and have a good time with game design on days where there isn't much to do for customer service and community building. So, for example, next Thursday is Thanksgiving. I think there will be a break at some point in that day to do a Thanksgiving meal with some family. And there's also, I'm doing a friend's Thanksgiving this weekend. So there are certainly social activities on any given day of the week that I will not be working during those social activities. But Thursday is otherwise just any other day for me. Jason says, oh, I'm sorry. Austin says, Jason, would you want to join us for playtesting Synchrony? Oh, that's actually good, Jason. So you put yourself out there, and Austin's already asking if you want to offer some feedback for it. Oh, Chad, yes, I saw this yesterday. Chad says, I saw they just dropped another trailer for Project Hail Mary movie. I feel like they showed too much. They did show a lot. I didn't mind it because I've read the book, although maybe I shouldn't have refreshed myself on the book. But I agree, Chad, if you have already decided that you want to see Project Hail Mary, and I think it's going to be a huge hit, probably don't watch the trailer for it if you've already decided that. But as someone who read the book and remembers it decently well, it was fun to watch the trailer because I kind of already know what happens, some of the main beats of the book. It looks really good. It looks really, really good. I'm very excited for that. Peter says, no reason not to move on to the next turn while you decide which card to take. Kind of, but not necessarily. This is in reference to the 2-for-1 choice in Tapestry. And again, that was only part of my reason for not doing the 2-for-1. But sometimes you're gaining benefits, multiple benefits in Tapestry, sometimes in the middle of your turn, and you need to make that decision in the middle of your turn. So you're right. If it is an end of turn decision, that does mean you don't have to slow the game down as much. But I think the other reasons I mentioned are still valid. I wouldn't recommend doing it. However, I understand that any house rule that makes the game more fun for you is something I support. It just isn't something that I would make an official variant. Darren says that his rescue dog, Diogo, named after the Liverpool player that died in the summer. Yeah, that was really unfortunate. Very, very sad. From Peru, arrives in the UK on Friday, so excited about his arrival. I've even created my first pet card for Vantage based on him. That's wonderful. I guess for those of you who don't know, you can create your cards for your pets for Vantage. You can just print it out at home. Cards in Vantage are never shuffled, so you don't need to make it out of the particular card stock. And that's what Darren is referencing here. There's a thread. If you search for like Vantage favorite pet on Board Game Geek, you'll see the big thread and the template that you can use to do that for your pet. So some other topics that I wanted to cover for today. We did see some movies over the past week. We went to the theater to see the movie Now You See Me 3, whatever the new name is for the new movie. And it was pure popcorn entertainment. And I really enjoyed it. I had forgotten that the Now You See Me movies are also heist movies. And I love heist movies. So if you enjoy a good heist movie, I actually thought it was rather good. And they used magic. They use like magician style magic a lot less in the movie, but they used practical solutions more than I thought. And I was really impressed by certain practical solutions and practical techniques that they used. And I heard the director talk about this, that while not every trick in the movie is actually done by the actors, they chose tricks related to the heist and otherwise that could have been done by a real person, by a real magician, which I thought was really clever that they did that. Like it isn't just movie magic. And there are even moments in the movie, and Now You See Me, where you'll think, okay, well, that's just movie magic. But then the reveal happens. You're like, oh, okay, they could have done that. They could have pulled this off. Yeah, so really cool. And Frankenstein as well, really impressive film in Frankenstein. We saw watch that on our TV on Netflix. I love the look of Guillermo del Toro's films, and I like the attention that the movie gave to the monster, not just Frankenstein. Really impressive movie there. I thought it maybe went on a little bit long, but that's okay. Like we were definitely up for a longer movie. What else is going on? Yeah, so I've been talking this week a lot about the Wingspan fan design bird promo packs, the new promo packs that have 25 completely new birds in them. This is the Birds of the USA one that I'm holding up. These are now available on our web stores, but they're also coming to retailers in the near future. And I talked a lot recently about the retail packaging. Sorry, I went out of focus there. We did some special retail packaging for these packs to make them a little more retailer friendly. Like it's the same exact thing here, but there's an external display box letting the retailer buy it as instead of buying individual packs, they can buy a little box, which retailers prefer. And they can sell the display box, which has all 6 different fan packs in it. They can sell it as a whole, or we designed it to be easily opened and transforms a little bit to be a display box. They can sell the packs individually if they prefer. So kind of a retailer forward decision that we're trying to make here with these fan design packs, these promo birds, and we'll see if it pays off for retailers. Hopefully it does. Let's see. Oh, Sub-Zero says, I recently began reading the Board Game Advice by Gabe Barrett. Good book. Yeah, I agree. Gabe's great, I think, at both interviewing and giving advice. I'd also recommend going back through the Board Game Design Lab podcast. There's tons of episodes, great conversations with Gabe, between Gabe and various game designers, including a few episodes that I appeared on. Yeah, that's a great recommendation. I did a video this past weekend about large player counts, so games with large player counts. Talked about games, like some heavier games that get away with having a large player count and how they do that through techniques like drafting or simultaneous play. That was a fun one to do. And I remember yesterday, I had a bit of a down moment yesterday when I happened upon a Reddit thread about Vantage, where someone was talking about how the Vantage experience at 6 players isn't the best experience. And it got me thinking a lot about player counts and those larger player counts. And the comment that got under my skin was that they blame the publisher, they blame me for putting 6 players on the box. And I've had some thoughts about that, because I agree that playing Vantage at 6 players is probably not the best first experience of playing Vantage. It's a lot. There's more downtime between turns. There's still a lot of things that you can do when it's not your turn, but there is more downtime between when you actually get to take an action. And it could lead to a longer game, but also games are a little easier at higher player counts, so it can lead to a shorter game at the same time. But it got me thinking a lot about like the publisher's responsibility for putting player counts on the box. And I stand by our decision to make Vantage a 1 to 6 player game. There are 6 characters in the game. You can play it at 6 players. I knew people if they could play it and might enjoy playing it at 6 players, even though it's a little less likely that you might do it there. And so I think it's fair to blame me for putting 5 to 6 players, I will say 6 players, for putting that player count on the Vantage box. But I also stand by it. I think it's a valid way to play Vantage. It may not be your preferred way to play Vantage, or even the preferred way to play Vantage for the first time, but I like that you can play Vantage at 6 players, and that it is a game where you are engaged in every turn of the game, where you're listening to other players, you're learning about what they're seeing in the world, what they're doing in the world. That can impact the decisions that you make, and there are multiple mechanical ways to impact and help other players as well when it's not your turn. So, yeah, it was interesting to hear that perspective and to think about that idea of what player counts do I put in the box and what player counts do we not put on the box. Yeah, just some thoughts there. Jeff says, here's a feel-good moment for Vantage. Yeah, I kind of need that after reading that comment yesterday, Jeff. Dice Tower just included it as one of their 12 games of Christmas for cooperative games as gifts for this year. Also, my first game of Vantage was at 6, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Well, that's good to hear, Jeff. I know you're... I really appreciate that. I'm glad you had fun with it. Yeah, and I think Chad says where you went wrong was reading something on Reddit. You know, I didn't mean to go there. I rarely go to Reddit because it is rarely good for my mental health to go there. But I was Googling on my phone to answer a question where someone had asked about how they can add their favorite pet to Vantage, and I was Googling. On my phone, I Googled like favorite pet Vantage Board Game Geek, and it led me to Reddit. It led me to see that Reddit thread. For some reason, I don't understand why. It didn't even lead me to the right thread. Jason says, we really enjoy Vantage at higher player counts, 5 specifically. It kind of has a party feel to it, so very fun. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I really appreciate hearing that. And I agree, Vantage does have a different feel between 1 to 2 players and then higher player counts. I don't think that makes it bad to play at those higher player counts, as long as you know what you're getting into. You're getting into kind of a wild ride with a bunch of different players doing different things that they want to do, and you deciding when to help other players and when you really need to hold those skill tokens to help yourself. I really enjoy both experiences. I enjoy the kind of the chill, solo mode of Vantage, or 1 to 2 players, where you're kind of, it's you don't have to worry about what other players are doing at those player counts, but you also have a lot less interaction at 1 player or 2 players. But I also really enjoy those times where I play Vantage at a higher player count, and I get to see these wild things that other players are doing and contribute to their adventures. That to me is also a lot of fun, and that's what I designed Vantage to accomplish. Chad says, what would you say is the hardest game mechanism to design with, which was the easiest? What would you say is the hardest game mechanism to design with? The hardest mechanism to design with. I have always, I mean, I've never successfully designed a deck building game. I think it's a lot harder to do something even slightly innovative with deck building and have it successful. So that is something that I've always had a challenge with. And in general, a bigger umbrella or genre that I've had a hard time with is, not a hard time with, but I would say it is harder to incorporate interaction into our games. And there are many different forms of player interaction. There's positive player interaction. There's ways that you can impact the shared space at the table. There's also negative player interaction, like direct combat and conflict. All forms of interaction, I would say, are in general a little harder for me to design around because they involve other players. And it is easier for me to play test with 1 player or with 2 players than it is for me to play test with a big group of players. I obviously do it. I get blind play tests at those player counts to make sure that those interactions are working at those higher player counts too. But in general, I would say that's a little bit harder to design around because it's just a lot easier to get a game to the table with 1 or 2 players than it is for 5 or 6 players. The Champion Factor says, I think that can depend on how someone prefers to play games. Mostly invest in your own game and progress. 6 may not be for you. Invested in the overall story of the group, 6 could be great. And I think that's a great way to put it. I won't even comment on it because I think you said that perfectly well. Julio says, I mostly play at 5 players, and your latest video really interested me. It's hard finding heavyish games that play at 5 or more. My group doesn't mind 3-hour games, so I'm sure, I'll continue Julio's comment here. So I'm sure there's games out there that we would enjoy with a 5-player expansion, even if it wasn't perfectly balanced. I know you mentioned it in the video, but we would buy that for some of my 4-player games in a jiff. That's great. And I'm glad at least, when you buy a Stonemaier game, except for Smitten, that you're getting up to that 5-player count out of the box and designed and play tested for that player count. Yeah, Philip says, I suppose publishers could indicate player counts and best plays at player counts, but that could open up a whole other can of beans. And I would say in general, at least for me, Philip, when I put a player count on the box, it means that we have designed for all of those player counts, that we have taken them into account in the design. So it's really hard for me to say that 1 player count is better than the other. If there's a player count that I don't believe in, that I don't think works for the game, then I don't put it on the box. Or we put something in the box like we did on Between Two Cities, where we say like that this is primarily a 2-player game, but primarily a 3+ player game. I'm sorry, but there is a 2-player variant in the box. I think the one caveat that I'm playing out here is that first experience. Is it maybe the best first experience for someone to play Vantage or even Viticulture? There was a thread about Viticulture the other day. Viticulture is 6 players. And some debate about whether or not that is the best first experience for Viticulture for players who haven't played before. And maybe not. Maybe it just in general is not best to play a game at the highest player counts the first time you play it. So you can stumble through it a little bit. You can learn as you go. And then you can have just a much smoother experience the next time you play with a higher player count. Darren says, there are very few games I play at the full player count. Very often the optimal player count is somewhere in the middle for Darren. I'd also add that every game says 2 players as well. It doesn't mean you should. That's true. Yeah, there are a lot of games that aren't quite ideal at 2 players. And that's actually why we put on the Between Two Cities, and I think Between Two Castles boxes, and it's a 3 to 7 player game with 1 to 2 player modes in the game. I think that level of transparency, I think in general, is pretty helpful. Monkey Butler says, wild speculation here, but if you're not fully engaged in what other players are doing in Vantage, there's huge downtime at higher player counts. We found others having side conversations or tuning out. And that's true. I think it is a choice to be engaged or not be engaged. And in Vantage, I built in very strong reasons to pay attention to what other players are doing and ask them questions and to hear what they're processing when they're deciding what to do on their location. But if other players aren't interested in that style of play where they are trying to learn together on this adventure, I could see them tuning out at higher player counts for sure. Jeremy says player count seems to be an issue with heavier gamers. I see recommendations to split into 2 groups of 3 or 4 instead of playing a 6 to 8 player game. Everyone has different preferences. And that's why I think it is a nice miracle where, or not a miracle, but a nice achievement when a game is designed to not have where the playing time doesn't exponentially increase for higher player counts, where there isn't a lot of downtime at those higher player counts. Games like Planet Unknown, which isn't a heavy game, but it is a heavier game than many other 6-player games. Flo also points out that players can check out Board Game Geek for the community's favorite player counts, and that is a great way to do it. I totally agree. So it's not ideally fair to blame publishers for what people see as the ideal number. I totally agree, Flo, and I agree. And I also think that it is subjective. Like my favorite game at 2 players might be your favorite game at 4 players. So I think I'm always hesitant to say that a game is the best at this player count or it is bad at this player count. It's more of a personal decision. This game is, I prefer to play this game at this player count, but I understand why others might want to play it at a higher player count. Austin says, most of the negative criticism I see about Vantage is from people who don't understand that the joy of exploration is the point of the game. And that is totally true, Austin. Some treat it like a strategy game. There is strategy in the game. There are choices to make in the game. It isn't just a choose your own adventure book. But I totally agree. If you're not embracing the joy of exploration, I don't even know why you're playing Vantage. Like that is the joy of discovery and exploration. That's what Vantage is designed to do. Yeah, well said, Austin. Rick says, I finally got Origin Story to the table on Saturday at 2 different play groups, 3 players and 5 players, and it was well received at both player counts. That's wonderful to hear, Rick, and thank you so much for sharing it with your friends at those player counts. I keep saying Edward. Oh, no, Edgar. Edward says, haven't played it last light, but it seems interesting that their big hook was an 8-player 4X that plays in an hour. I haven't played it at 8 player. I played it at maybe 3 or 4 players. But you're right, it's fully simultaneous, and so it can play in that playing time. Yeah, that's a neat hook to throw into the game. Peter says, is a board game arena version for Vantage possible? Spoilers would be a problem. You'd have to remove replays at a minimum. I mean, at this point, I think, we're still fairly early in Vantage's release. I think I'm a lot more open to people. Like, I want people to share their experiences with Vantage. I think if you're watching a replay, you know that you're getting into spoiler territory there. We generally consider Board Game Arena for our games after they've been out for at least a year or 2. So I'm not actively thinking about Board Game Arena right now for Vantage. I don't necessarily think that Board Game Arena would be the best format for Vantage either, because it would, I think, like Board Game Arena, I think for us is great for connecting with other human players in either real time or the staggered time way that you can play on Board Game Arena. But it is not my preferred platform for games that you're playing against the AI or with the AI, or playing effectively solo using the AI to act as their players. So Vantage, I'm saying this in an odd way, but Vantage, I think, is so key that you are talking through your turns with other players, and that isn't really conducive to multiplayer play on Board Game Arena. So I don't know if Vantage really works all that well for digital play beyond solo play, which I think is kind of limiting for the game. I think it's fine, but if Vantage is so quick and easy to set up that I would much rather play it on the tabletop, I think, than digitally. Partially, and I'm saying that partially because that's how we play test Vantage. We played it digitally, and it's very easy to get distracted, I found, when you are play testing a game digitally by all the other things that are on a computer screen. I much rather turn off those things and just focus on the game on the table instead. Chad says, in the spirit of Vantage, I noticed there are a few leaked photos of Zelda and Link in the live-action Zelda movie they're filming. They look so good. And I agree. I saw those photos the other day. And they looked like Zelda and Link, like they look like how I would picture them looking in live action. It was pretty incredible. I hope they pull off that movie. That could be an incredible movie if they really pull it off. What other topics? I talked about what I played, talked about what I'm reading, movies. I went to Whisk Bakery this past weekend. Whisk is a wonderful little bakery in St. Louis that has reopened their brick and mortar location. So if you are someone in St. Louis, I highly recommend checking out the Whisk Bakery. It's down off of Jefferson and Cherokee in that area. Talked about Walter's birthday, the Wingspan promo packs, and larger player player count games. Oh, I did have a question for you. I'm sorry. My question of the day today, we'll end with this, is how do you feel about meta collective elements in tabletop games? And I'll give two examples for these, one of which is a minor spoiler for Charterstone, and one is not, for Legend of the Five Rings. So Legend of the Five Rings is a game that had a meta collective element for a long time, not in its current version, but for a long time, where they had tournaments in person for Legend of the Five Rings, where the winner of the tournament and the winning like faction or character, winning house, I think, or clan, whatever they call them in Legend of the Five Rings, that would impact the actual storyline and future mechanisms of Legend of the Five Rings. So things that players were actually doing while they played this game impacted the overall story and world and mechanisms of this game. I am fascinated by this type of thing, and I've incorporated it into a few of our games. I won't spoil one of them, but one of them is in Charterstone, where there is something that you do at a certain point of the game where you pin a digital map where other players around the world who have played Charterstone have also pinned that digital map of Green Gully, of the Kingdom of Green Gully. And it does some other things too that I won't go into the spoiler territory, but that is the general idea. And I personally think that's really cool, but I'm curious what you think. Do you like those collective elements where if you're playing a tabletop game, or maybe a digital game, but I'd like to focus a little bit more on tabletop game. When you're playing a tabletop game, if there's something that links you, that connects you, even momentarily, to everyone else that's playing that game, is that exciting for you? Is that fun for you? What are some other examples of games that have done that you could bring up? I guess one, as I'm talking here, is Keyforge. Keyforge does it a little bit, where they can have, you can like register and log your deck, and they can, I think they had this whole system of like making certain decks, like giving certain decks boost or banes based on how powerful they got over time. Maybe they call them like chains or something like that. But are there any other games like that, meta collective elements in tabletop games that you can think of that I can use for examples if I end up writing about this topic? While you think about that, Armando has asked, have you played a Legend of Zelda game? I have. Just a little bit, though. Most of my research for Zelda Breath of the Wild was in watching reviews and videos of people playing the game. I played a little bit of it, but I really struggled to control the camera, as I was also trying to control the character. I don't have that video game dexterity element in me. So I played a little bit of it, but not a lot of it. That question I posed, in case we end up ending before you have the chance to think about those meta collective elements, feel free to let me know in the comments of this video. But yeah, it's an area of games that really fascinates me. Like I love being focused on the game and my friends at that moment where I'm playing it, but I also like connecting to all the people around the world and feeling like other people around the world are playing the same thing that I'm playing. That feels good. That's often the reason why I'll watch a review of a game that I already know that I love, just to kind of get excited about to get excited about the game and to see someone else also getting excited about that game. Austin says it was pretty mind-blowing running into something like that for the first time Austin's avoiding a spoiler here that I know what he's referencing. And maybe I'll put that in like spoiler text in the article if I write an article about this Austin. So Aaron, I'm not going to post your comment because you are posting the spoiler that I'm trying to avoid here. But Aaron's asking about moderation for those sorts of things. How do we moderate that sort of thing? And we've I can answer for Charterstone, because in Charterstone, you actually get to write something in there. So it's a free write place that you could write anything you want. So you could write something really crude if you wanted to. And I think we found ways to build in, we did two things. One is that there are filters that we can build in to avoid certain words, but you can also help players moderate it. So if someone sees something like that they have the ability to flag it and identify it and highlight it for us to review, or if we could just say that anything that is flagged is removed, we can even do that. Or if it receives a certain number of flags that's removed, we can build that logic into those sorts of digital connective interfaces. Julio says, what do you think about highly modular games? Just the other day I was researching a game that I played, but I've been thinking more about it, Cthulhu Death May Die, which is a highly modular game. It isn't really a scenario-based game. It's a game that has, I guess it has scenarios that are modular with the characters that are modular with the ancient ones, the old ones. That sort of modularity, is that what you're referring to? Where you're mixing and matching different elements, sometimes shuffling things together, but sometimes just combining them in different ways for a scenario-like approach. And I'm fascinated by that. I think that leads to a lot of replayability, where as long as each individual thing is replayable on its own, I think those can work really well and are kind of fascinating to me. What are some other modular games that you enjoy, Julio? Because I think a lot of games do this in different ways. Like even, I guess, modularity. Like, do you look at it from the player on a player level, like asymmetric pairings? I've talked about that. I have a video about that. Or is modular specifically talking about a shared modularity where everyone's using the same? You're plugging in the same modules for everyone to use, kind of like in SETI, where everyone has the same 2 aliens. Those are for all players, not individual to the different players at the table. Chad says, this reminds me of real-world geocaching. I have heard of geocaching. I've never actually done it, but he said it's basically a worldwide treasure hunt using GPS. You find the hidden cache, you write notes inside, you share treasures. Very fun. Yeah, I think people have had a lot of fun with that, and I love the connection to the actual physical space of the real world with geocaching. Julio talks about Vindication, Dinosaur Island, and even Tapestry and Wingspan, I'd argue. Yeah, Wingspan, I guess, with the different combinations of expansions has it. Tapestry, same with expansions. I would say that has more the player-driven asymmetric pairing. Vindication, Dinosaur Island. I can't remember. It's been a while since I played that one, or Vindication. Spirit Island has that modular element where you're combining the colonizers with the spirits. But even then, I would say does that count as modularity? Or does that, yeah, I guess that is modular. Yeah, I guess I need to figure out how to define modularity in this case. Yeah, how do you all define modularity for that? Can it be a combination of a variable game element and a player-specific element, or is it only global elements that all players are sharing for the game itself? Julio says, let's do a video. Yeah, let's do it, Julio. Clearly you're thinking about this. I'll make a note of this modularity. And I think like Cthulhu, SETI, Cthulhu, Death May Die. There's also, I need to decide where to draw the line. I think I do want to separate it from asymmetric pairings that each player has and rather make it something that all players are sharing, at least part of it. Spaceship Lugo says, with the complete wipe of Tabletop Simulator files from Discords, and just to be clear, it has been our policy for years for our content to not be on Tabletop Simulator due to huge copyright issues, theft issues. That is not a new thing. Will there be alternate ways for people with disabilities to be able to play? Many people can't play in person. Yeah, there are many ways to play our games legally if you can't play on the tabletop. One is on the tabletop, of course. That's a legal way to play. Whether that's on your tabletop or at a convention or a game shop or a game cafe. Online, many of our games are available in full digital versions. Many of our games are available on Board Game Arena, and all of our games, except for Vantage, but all of our games are available on Tabletopia, where we officially approve, and those games are legally on Tabletopia. So if you want to play our games digitally, play them on any of those many different options. Please do not play our games illegally and not approved and unauthorized on Tabletop Simulator. Small world modularity, I can see that. Small world, yeah, it's close. I would say that's maybe a little bit ends up being more player-driven modularity, asymmetric pairings. Chad says Marvel United makes the game super replayable. So I guess I'll have to decide if part of the modularity can be what the players are doing, because part of it is your unique hero in Marvel United plays into that into that modularity. But there are other global elements of modularity there as well. Clank in Space does have modularity. Yeah, that's a good point. Clank in Space. White Castle. Does White Castle have modularity? I think of White Castle of having set up variability, but I don't necessarily think about it in terms of modularity, Aaron. But feel free to contradict that. Shackleton Base. Yeah, there's a good one, Stephen. I haven't played this yet, but I've heard this, where you select 3 of the 7 businesses to incorporate into the main game, and they become a core part of that experience. That is that's the kind of modularity that I'm thinking of here. Shackleton Base. Yeah, that's a great example. Here's William popping in at the end. He says, sounds like a global legacy mechanism. Yeah, a little bit of that. I don't think I played a board game with that. Could give a game more longevity. Video games do this a lot, and it seems to bolster the community. Yeah, one of the games that has done this, or video games that has done this recently, is Helldivers, I think is what it's called, where as players globally do something, they gain access to new planets as a whole. So if they like free a certain part of the galaxy, that opens up access to a new planet. And I think that's pretty cool. Lost Ruins of Arnak, highly modular. Yes, because you vary the dungeon that you're crawling through in Arnak. Yeah, that makes sense. Champion Faction, are you thinking like different modules players can choose to use in the game, like Rise of Fenris? Yeah, that is actually a great example with Rise of Fenris. Those modules can be used in any version of Scythe, not just when you're playing with Rise of Fenris. But yeah, that is the type of module that I'm talking about. Modular map of Star Wars Outer Rim, that's maybe a little bit of a depart. That's more of a variable setup thing, I would say, than modularity. They're very closely intertangled, though, or intertwined. JK49er fan says, do you think pendulum in the board game world will start swinging back to a... Do you think the pendulum, not our game pendulum, will start swinging back to a more PvP or central game board compared to the many tableau-style games that have been very popular in the last few years? I think both will continue to... I think both will be games that we see in the future. I think there are people who really like the tableau style games. I think there are people who really like the central conflict style game. I think we'll see both. Devil Soldier says, how is modularity different than variable setup? And I think that is the thing that I need to define a little bit, that I think variable setup is more about varying a number of different components throughout the game during setup throughout the game board, whereas modularity is about like big chunks. Like this is the blank module that we're playing with, combined with this blank module, and that is kind of defining the core interactions of the game in that space. Let's see. Liz mentions the Let's Waltz expansion for Grand Austria Hotel has several modules that you can use different combinations. Actually, yeah, I've seen that in a couple games like this. Grand Austria, I've seen it in Fresco, has a bunch of modules that you can plug in. And actually, oftentimes when games do that, I am less interested in that type of modularity. I kind of want it when it's really built into the core of the game rather than just a bunch of optional things that I can plug into. I see Scythe is the modular king. Scythe does have a lot of modularity, but not necessarily in the way that I'm talking about it here. All right, so this is a good food for thought. I will think a lot more about this. You'll have given me some great ideas here to think about a modular game video for the future. Thank you for hanging out with me here, for answering questions, for asking questions. Have a great week, a great weekend, and I'll see you next Wednesday, right before Thanksgiving here in the U.S. Take care. Bye.